As I was playing through The Last of Us Part 2, I couldn't help but be struck by just how real the game feels. But what do I mean by real? I mean that the world feels fully realized. It's bursting at the seams with its own history, its own environments, and most importantly, its own people. People with their own stories. Playing through this game feels like a glimpse into another world separate from our own. A world that is so full and complete, it exists in its own space, its own reality. It feels alive. So what is it that makes The Last of Us feel so real? In a word, detail. Booting it up for the first time, I was immediately in awe of how beautiful the game is. Every environment in the game is meticulously crafted with endless amounts of detail that, when taken in together, contribute to a greater whole. The first playable scene opens up with you controlling Joel on horseback, greeted by a gorgeous sweeping view of the Teton mountain range and golden hour. Peering across the landscape, it looks lifelike. The soft, natural lighting gives the scene an almost photorealistic quality. It's a visual feast, and the rest of the game doesn't disappoint. Every locale is just as impressive and saturated with detail as the last, whether it's a raging snowstorm in the mountains, a quaint but peaceful post-apocalyptic town, or the ruins of a decimated Seattle cityscape reclaimed by nature. Each of these environments is so jam-packed with visual niceties that your eye points to no one odd or missing thing in particular, but is instead drawn to the major features presented before you. Everything exists in the space as a snapshot of the world resetting on the day of the outbreak. When you take a moment to soak in the details, you can see how the concept of normal changed overnight, and people abandoned everything they once thought was important. The game is full of moments like these, where the subtext and the context hidden in the details give way to a broader perspective of what a world interrupted looks like. But how did things get this bad? The infected. The combat in this game is visceral, brutal, relentless. Human enemies cry out for their fallen friends.
Hey! Respond!
Casey? Hey, come on, this isn't funny. She's dead!
Infected leap out of every other corner.
No, you don't!
Stealth works best, but always fails to get you too far before you're back to bashing skulls, slitting throats, and blasting shotguns. Every hit, every bullet, feels like a fresh shot of adrenaline. The fight sequences amp you up so much that by the end of a major battle, you'll jump at the slightest sound. The combat, just like the rest of the game, is intricately thought out and weaves together with the story to emphasize the feeling of weight and danger to your actions. While stumbling through the ruins of old Seattle, I found a survivor's note to a friend saying he heard a bank nearby was full of supplies. Notes like these are scattered throughout the game, side missions with tons of promise and character development that are completely missable if you don't take the time to discover them. Upon arriving, we're greeted with a dilapidated, almost caved-in abandoned building. After crawling through the rubble, we reach the inside of the bank. The area is infested with infected. But these infected look a bit different than normal. They're wearing body armor. An odd detail to be sure, but I had to clear the area anyways. After disposing of the infected, I rummaged through the remains to find the combination to the bank vault. I immediately felt excited at the prospect of a bank vault. But then the reality quickly set in. What value could a bank vault provide in a post-apocalyptic hellhole? Nobody in this day and age cares for paper money or gold. The new currency is food, supplies, shelter, ammunition, and so my excitement quickly waned into a tepid curiosity. Ellie takes a moment, pops it open, but lo and behold, pump, action, shotgun.
Thanks, dude.
An incredibly valuable find at this point in time. Somehow the game manages to reveal real, functional treasure when it feels like it couldn't possibly have anything else to offer. I was elated. However, after the initial thrill of the treasure hunt wore off, I took another look and realized where it came from. Another guy in body armor. But this one was different, not infected. Instead, he was slumped over with the shotgun pointing at his head. Nearby, a hastily scribbled note outlines the details of his demise. This guy had no idea that the world around him was to come crumbling down, and even if they had escaped with the score, it would have made no difference. That day, the world was forever and irrevocably changed. The ultimate irony is that he gave his life in an attempt to live a better life in an old world that no longer existed. This little side mission proved to be a poignant, depressing reminder that as much as we may feel like we have our own vision and control of our destiny, the world will do what it does, with total indifference to you, your plans, and your desires. Combing through the game's environments, you run into a plethora of notes, journals, doodles, last wishes. Some of these are plot-driven and necessary. Some provide access to valuable resources locked in safes, or give directions to optional areas. But the common theme between them is an overwhelmingly human element. Every note in the game is handwritten by people with different handwriting. Not only are the notes handwritten, but they feel as if they were written by hand. Computers by and large do little else than gather dust. Almost every note found in the game is written by hand from somebody who was trying to convey a message for a specific reason, whether it's a journal of their life, a note to a lover, a logbook for patrol, or their last will and testament. Everything is written by hand. Following the massive outbreak, the humans in The Last of Us were forced to step back a generation and do things the old-fashioned way. The notes in this game provide a snapshot of the people who wrote them and what they were feeling at the time. That brings me to this scene. I stumbled upon a decayed old 2-story single-family home. From the outside, it was quite unremarkable. It looks just like most other homes in the game, abandoned, desolate, forgotten by time. But when I got to the upstairs bedroom and opened the bedside table, I found a note. The note was from a child to Santa, presumably kept by the father and read over and over, maybe even after the child met his demise. The game is littered with notes like these throughout, heartfelt and real glimpses into the devastating lives of those left in the wake of a massive global pandemic. Perhaps more relevant than ever, we get a peek into the toll that a worldwide catastrophe can have on the greater whole of the combined human psyche.
I saved her.
The Last of Us is more than just a game. It's a complete, interactive, cinematic narrative that takes us through a world not so unlike our own. We're given a taste of how bad things could really be, and the pain and anguish that we as humans would go through in such extraordinary and extreme hardship. It paints this very real picture of despair, isolation, and helplessness. But at the same time, it shows that even the darkest of times give rise to new life, and that the world, and life itself, will continue to persist. It shows us that light and dark are two sides of a coin, eternally flipping, while we are just caught somewhere in between. And that's why The Last of Us feels so real. It feels real because, through its immense detail, it shows us a reflection of the world that we live in. Even though it plays out a fictional doomsday scenario, it does so with such an intense, focused energy that we can't help but feel as if we're living it ourselves. Hey, Tim here. Thank you so much for watching, and I really hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please consider subscribing to see more content like this in the future. I know there's a lot of controversy around this particular game, but to be honest, I really did enjoy it, and I have immense respect for the talented and hardworking team at Naughty Dog for producing this game. Anyway, let me know what you guys thought in the comments, and if there's anything else you'd like to see me do in the future. That's all for now, so I'll see you in the next one.